Let me wish good afternoon to all. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good morning to our European friends, Patrick from Netherlands, our speaker. And good evening to our South Asian friends. I welcome you all for today's e-conference on unlocking lab efficiency through digital transformation, organized by Indian Chemical News, in short we call ICN, and our presenting partner, Perkin Elmer. Indian Chemical News is a new age media platform which provides a complete 360-degree view on the chemical sector, both local as well as global. The new age media disseminates information to chemical industry stakeholders through multiple platforms, news portal, research reports, e-conferences, industry report, and others. The portal focuses on petrochemicals, pharmaceuticals, and energy sectors through news, views, trends, analysis, technology updates, interviews, and columns. Myself, Praveen Prashant, will be your host and moderator for today's e-conference. The presenting partner for today's e-conference is Perkin Elmer, which enables scientists, researchers, and clinicians to address their most critical challenges across science and healthcare. Next slide. So Perkin Elmer present for the better is their tagline. Next slide. The speaker for today's e-conference is Kapil Kumar, Chief Scientific Officer, SRF Limited. Vinod Sivanand Honbute, Head Knowledge Management, Aarti Industries Limited. Ankit Agarwal, Head Research IT and Scientific Computation, I Industries Limited. Sanjay Nandavadekar, Director IT Cipla. Patrick Ensems, Director Information Field Application Scientist, EMAI, Perkin Elmer. Manish M. Khandagle, Senior Field Application Specialist, Perkin Elmer. Next. So what we are covering in today's e-conference is multiple things, and hope it would be interesting for you all. The topics that we are covering is perspective on where the industry is currently unlocking lab efficiency through digital transformation, benefits achieved in its move towards digital platforms, best practices recommendation to scientific R&D organizations to achieve successful digital transformation journey, challenges that one faces in moving from the paper world to the digital one and how they have overcome these challenges, advances that one foresee in the next 5 years within the organization and solutions that one are looking into. Research is a collaborative endeavor across many departments, and how have digital efforts changed the research ecosystem, challenges companies are facing when it comes to getting the most out of diverse data being generated across various data systems and silos, and how lab data be leveraged to gain a competitive edge. And the last is adopting and implementing digital solutions, electronic lab notebooks, and advanced visual analytics successfully. Next slide. We have two e-conferences more in the month of June. One is on specialty chemicals on June 18, 2021, and another on June 25, green chemistry and sustainability, challenges and opportunities. I request you to visit Indian Chemical News website and register for both the events. Next slide. Just a brief on the ICN Play and Win contest. This is just for the delegates so that they can win few prizes by attending this e-conference. About the contest, I shall be asking questions from the delegates during the course of the session, and the one who responds first with the correct answer stands eligible for winning ₹1,000 gift voucher from Amazon. So request you to carefully listen to the presentation to be given by Perkin Elmer experts. All the questions will be asked by the moderator of the session, and the replies need to be given in the chat window. Those who are have been attending sessions would be aware, but for people who are new, the replies need to be given in the chat window and not in the Q&A window. So please give your replies in the chat window box of your respective screen on the Zoom platform. Final winners to be announced at the close of the e-conference session today. Terms and conditions: only the person with the correct answer responding first in order to priority shall be declared winner. Organizers and sponsor partner employees are not eligible to participate in the contest, and also even speakers. Organizers' decision to be treated as final in case of any discrepancies, and gift vouchers to be sent electronically to all the winners post completion of the session. Next slide. So now I would request PerkinElmer team to give their presentation. We have Mr. Patrick Ensems, Director, Information Field Application Scientist, EMI, PerkinElmer, and Mr. Manish M. Kandagle, Senior Field Application Specialist, PerkinElmer, to give their presentation. So over to Mr. Patrick Ensems and Mr. Manish M. Kandagle.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Praveen, for the very kind introduction. As mentioned, my name is Patrick Ensems. I'm calling in from the Netherlands, and I'm responsible for the Field Application Scientist group within PerkinElmer Informatics within EMEA and India. And I feel very privileged today to be speaking to all of you, as well as being joined by such reputable leaders within our domain. The presentation that we'll go over today is entitled Unlocking Lab Efficiency Through Digital Transformation, and we do that together with ICM. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, next, please. Yes, thank you very much. Could you please click one more time? The title probably will be there. Yes, great. Thank you. So this is an introduction to PerkinElmer. For those of you who don't know the company, it is a very large organization that has distributed offices across the globe. Roughly a third of all the business is being generated in every major segment, Americas, Europe, and Asia. It's a company that generates around $2.9 billion in revenue, of which the majority is coming out of the life science, applied markets, and food domain. If you distill that down a little bit further, then you'll actually see that also the company is kind of nicely organized in thirds, meaning that a third is coming from the instruments. Most people actually know PerkinElmer from the instruments on the lab, but what most people don't know is that actually a third is also coming out of consumables for those instruments, but another third is actually coming out of the software and services space. So if you could get the next slide, please. Great. So PerkinElmer has already decades of experience helping organizations being able to find better answers, find faster answers and quicker. We do that with around 4,000 companies globally that are either in the kind of life science or in what we call the applied markets, which is specialty chemical, food and agro, oil and gas. PerkinElmer Informatics consists of around 525 employees, and we currently service quite a few organizations as listed, which actually contain, for instance, 4 out of the 5 India generics companies, 100% of the top 20 pharma, as well as 16 out of the top 20 chemical companies. The renewal rate is around 97%, meaning that if customers actually have committed to going on this digital transformation journey with us and helping them to find solutions for the problems that they're facing, they've been very well served and are actually quite happy with the overall implementation of their overall solutions. If I could have the next slide, please. So as said, there are a ton of companies that we're working with. These are just a few examples of names that you might know from the Indian geography. And as I said, I'm very happy and very delighted to actually be joined in the panel discussion with several of those. Just to kind of name a few: Dr. Reddy's, SRF, Cipla, Fresenius Kabi, Syngene, Zydus Cadila, Lupin, RT Industries, MPI Industries have been customers of us for quite a while. I know all of the faces that are part of the panel, and I'm looking forward to having a continued conversation with them after this event. So please, the next slide. So how do we actually help these type of organizations, and what value do they get after going through such a digital transformation journey. First of all, you kind of look at three major aspects. One is from a scientist standpoint. So we see that scientists typically save about 10+ hours per week by just avoiding repetition of work. They know what has been done historically. They have learned from that information that might have been collected by peers and others, and therefore unnecessary duplication can be avoided of work. The other vertical is that you actually save monetary value by avoiding duplication of work, by reutilization of chemicals, knowing which chemicals are available within your lab. Leaders within those organizations save up to $5 million per 100 scientists per year in order to avoid duplication of work. And the last vertical is actually save time and hassle to be able to go to your products. You bring your products to market way faster. So we typically see around 40% of reduction in go-to-market time by just having all of that information electronically, know where that needs to be retrieved, and be able to make better decisions based on the information that's available. If we could go to the next slide, please. Yes, there we go. Great. So if we look at how these type of organizations actually reach those goals by leading to the values that we have been mentioning in the previous slide, this is like hiking up a mountain, right? When you are at the base of the mountain, you have your ultimate goal in sight. Like, you know where as an organization you would like to go towards. You would like to reach the top of the summit. And in this case, the top of that summit is being able to make data-driven decisions. But in order to get to that top, the journey is not always necessarily easy. And along the lines, along that journey, several decisions need to be made around what is the most optimal way to go to this top. So we typically describe 3 steps that we work through with these organizations when they're implementing a digital transformation strategy. First step is capture and collaborate, right? So most of these organizations are coming from paper. What is their current process? If they have already some applications being utilized, what are they? Like, how are they being utilized? And how can a ELN help to facilitate and transition towards the digital world? The second aspect is to help with the organization of the workflow. And this is usually the most crucial aspect. What are the expectations of the scientist? How can we model and optimize the workflow to make it ready for that digital change? How do you work through the transition process? Because it's not only about kind of moving from paper to electronic, but it's also how you take your scientists on that journey towards the digital world. And how do you kind of broker through that entire change management process? I will go into a little bit more details later on, but these are really important steps to memorize. The last part is when you actually have everything in electronic nature and you've been able to optimize and organize the workflow, you will have the ability to make data-driven decisions. If you can go to the next slide, please. Here is a couple of examples, and I'm very privileged to have with me one of my senior field application specialists, Manish Kanagale, and he will go through a couple of examples of these type of dashboards. We'll focus on 4 key examples: operations, route optimization, analytical data, and SAR analysis. Manish, over to you.
Okay, so thanks again, Patrick. So in my brief demonstration, I'll be going through some of the use cases to show how digitization of laboratory workflows together with advanced analytics can help you in making better and faster decisions. So this is an example which represents a typical scenario in a synthesis lab, where tracking efficiencies of different user groups, project timelines, resource utilization are some of the key challenges that R&D managers face. And this example shows how integrating ELN with Spotfire analytics can give you better insights into laboratory operations. As you can see here, in one place, you can see all different kind of projects, as well as number of different experiments that have been performed and recorded in this ELN. You can check their status, whether it's open or closed, On the right side panel, you can see all different kind of reactions that have been performed in this lab. You can further go into specific project details. You can select the project, see who are the major contributors in this project, who has performed experiments, what kind of experiments have been performed. You can see experiment title, their status, associated metadata. If you are interested in a specific reaction, you can select that reaction and further look into the reaction details. So as it brings all this data from ELNs, it shows all these details, reaction scheme, reactants and products, their stoichiometry data, preparation notes. You can access all this information here. As an R&D manager, you might be interested in tracking activities on a daily basis, monthly or weekly basis. You can see if there is any specific activity, what kind of work has been done, who has contributed, what are the total reactions performed by individual user. You can see. Also check individual performance metrics, who has which user has performed which, contributed to which project, how many projects he has contributed, what is the status of these projects. So here you can access all this information, and as mentioned earlier, this data has been extracted from ELN. So similarly, you can build dashboards to monitor instrument usage, their downtime, calibration, as well as other cost metrics. You can simply you can quickly build dashboards, and having all this information in one place can give you better insights into laboratory operations. You can quickly identify the bottlenecks and take corrective actions more efficiency, which can help in improving quality and productivity of the laboratory operations. So while R&D manager is interested in lab operations, synthesis chemist, project manager might be interested in improving route optimization or process optimization. So we know process optimization is one of the most important aspect of synthesis R&D. It requires balancing cost, efficiency, yield, and the safety risk. All these factors needs to be balanced, and hence it requires a lot of experimental work. So before initiating any project, it is wise to look at what has already been done before starting a new project. So here you are seeing process R&D data that has been extracted from ELN. You can see all the products, reactants that have been synthesized in this lab with all reaction details and associated information. So let's take example. You want to make synthesize acetaminophen, and before synthesizing acetaminophen, you want to see if it has been synthesized before, and if it has been synthesized, which is the best route to start with. You can use various filters to search that process, or you can use structure substructure filters. You can copy paste structure, or you can also use name to structure converter. Here I can simply put the name of the desired compound, and you can apply this filter where it quickly search through this data, and it gives me result. Shows me that there are 5 different routes in which acetaminophen has been formed in the 3rd step, and also shows the process related data here. Once we have these 5 options, you would like to see what are the reactants, what are the starting conditions and the reaction conditions. You can see the starting materials, yield and reaction conditions, as well as stoichiometry with these different reactants, which can help you in selecting suitable starting conditions. Once the route have been identified, suitable starting conditions have been selected, next thing you would like to see the feasibility of this reaction, whether it is a practical. So this page here shows a comparison of all 5 routes with their individual steps. Each of the step is represented by different blocks, and it is colored based on the average, maximum and minimum yield that can be obtained in these states. Along y-axis, you can see the level of feasibility, easy, complex, and medium. And with a quick glance, it shows me that route 5 seems to give a better yield. At the same time, it has higher level of complexity. And the project manager would be interested in looking at the project timelines, how much time, a number of days have been spent on each of the state, and that you can see. There is a growing awareness about sustainability, and this page here shows comparison of all 5 routes with respect to commonly used green chemistry metrics such as PMI, atom economy, and stoichiometry. So you can compare these different routes with respect to these green chemistry parameters. Here we can see route 5 stands out clearly, and remaining 4 are somewhat similar. But as mentioned earlier, route optimization is about balancing cost, efficiency, yield, and safety. And you have to look at all these factors together. So here it shows, this page gives you an overview of all 5 routes together, as well as the critical factors such as yield, purity, feasibility, safety, and cost. Considering these factors, and if you look at this route 5, clearly it says that it gives high yield, but at the same time there are concerns with respect to feasibility and safety, and also high costs are involved. Whereas if you look at another route, the route 4, reasonably good yield and considerably low cost, very high purity, and feasibility you can expect. So this example shows how you can integrate all process data in one place, have interactive snapshot view of entire process, all the projects. You can look at the different cost and safety contributors that can help you in designing more efficient processes. The Spotfire analytics can also be used to extract analytical data. So here you can see the Spotfire analytics is used to access and analyze Empower chromatography data. This could be from many different instruments as well as from different sites. As you can see, all different chromatograms, you can see data has been extracted from the CDS. So once analysis is performed and basic processing is done, you can bring these Empower data files or raw data files by automated or by manual processes. It brings together all this data from CDS. You can look at individual chromatogram, and as you can see here, the main peak has been identified. Area under the curve has been calculated. It brings all the peak performance as well as sequence parameters here. You can overlay multiple chromatograms here. And finally, you can have the summary of all the reports in one place. One of the advantage of having this analytical data in a Spotfire is you can review this analytical data. You can select all the information that you are interested in, and you can publish this data. You can send this data to central data repository, and so that you can combine this analytical data together with other studies, for example, biological assays for the same set of compounds that can help you in building better correlations between different analysis. The next example I'm going through is structure-activity relationship. And as we know, SAR analysis has long been used by pharma and chemical companies. In pharmaceutical industry, the focus is on improving pharmacology and therapeutic benefits, whereas in the chemical industry, ecotoxicity as well as the health hazards are the main concerns, and SAR investigations are used for that. It is common to see complex data sets in a SAR analysis, and here we'll see how data analytics solutions can help you in SAR investigations. So here you're seeing set of 958 benzodiazepine analogs with their chemical structures, molecular properties, all assay values. You can see all this information has been brought from different data sources, but nicely organized in one place in interactive manner. You can also see individual cells have been colored based on the user-defined thresholds, such as desired molecular weight, solubility, as well as bioavailability. So that helps in getting quick insights into drug likeliness of the compounds, as well as the patterns in structural features. There are a variety of filters which you can use to filter out the compounds, and you can see visualizations changing dynamically. And just you can also save these filters and use preset links to quickly find answers to the questions you have. For example, in this case, I'm interested in compounds with at least 80% of activity and 50% of bioavailability. One click and it can filter out all these compounds to 20. As mentioned earlier, SAR analysis, it's common to deal with complex data sets in SAR analysis. And here, you can see Spotfire has an in-memory data engine. So that means it can help you in reducing dimensionality. It gives more flexibility the way data handle and visualizations are created. Here, simple two-dimensional scatter plot is created for the cell assay values. And you can add additional dimensions here by coloring data points by different molecular weights. Similarly, you can add shape mapping. Say, I would like to see the series distribution, and you can see additional dimension in the same plot. Looking to a specific group of compounds, what makes these compounds so different. You can look at their structures, further investigate commonalities between their structures. So you can further do advanced analysis in the same interface. So this page here shows a series overview. It shows all the compounds that are in the lead discovery project, and it shows the distribution of key physicochemical properties for the compounds in selected series. So this information can help in deciding which series to advance, which compounds to consider for further development. Similarly, you can set different KPIs. You can change these parameters here and see it visualizations changing dynamically. You can also see moment you change these KPIs, you can see visualizations changing, number of compounds which meet this criteria. You see series distribution. You can look at here number of compounds that fulfill individual criteria, as well as the you can see very less number of compounds which fulfill 3 or more criteria, and further investigate to see what is the reason, what are the criteria these compounds are filling. Biologists might be interested in IC50 curves, looking at the dose response curves. So they can select different compounds, check their dose response curves for different assays. Also, they can do variety of line fit analysis. They can do further statistical analysis here. So this visualization, here it shows the heat map representation together with hierarchical clustering of the compounds. So this visualization can be used to find a relation between structurally similar compounds and their activities. So you can select structurally similar compounds and see if there's any pattern in a biological activity. So this example shows how chemists, biologists, as well as statisticians can contribute, and all these systems can be combined together, and that can enhance the collaboration between different disciplines. So to summarize, as shown in all these 4 examples, integrating ELN as well as other data sources with analytics tools can provide a single interactive interface, allowing users from different disciplines as well as from different organization levels to share the knowledge, collaborate more effectively, and gain better insights. So in past 2 decades, we have seen a lot of pharma and chemical companies. They have adopted digitization strategies. ELN usage has reached to some level of maturity, and now the organizations are looking for the ways to make better use of the data that has been stored. They are looking for the better business analytics solutions, and that's the topic of discussion here. And we are looking forward to learn more about the different digitization strategies in next panel discussion. And we hope to collaborate with you in your digitization journey. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much, Manish. Very nice presentation. Could I go back to the slides, please? Super. Thanks very much. So I think what Manish has been great in kind of demonstrating is the ultimate goal that customers can achieve when they go into this digital transformation journey. And what are the key values of focus points of industries when they go on these type of journeys? One is just being able to find information. There are Forrester reports out there that say that about 80% of a scientist's time is actually spent on finding information. It is in different systems. It might not be in systems that you have access to. Kind of think about this SAR workflow where you have chemists and biologists and analysts kind of working together to be able to get value out of some of that information. And so you will need to find information. You can actually unify that information. And so your data is everywhere, but how do you actually make sense out of that in order to drive and accelerate your product development? In the end, if you have all of that information available on your fingertips, right? How can you utilize that to respond to changes faster? Either changes by the customer or changes by your product. By having all of that information, you can seamlessly switch to a different type of view that is relevant for your decision-making process. And as I said, all of the aspects that you have seen today are aspects that we as PerkinElmer support with our platform. You saw today that we have chemical experience or expertise built in within the platform, allowing you to search and filter, but actually also draw the reactions either within your ELN or utilize that to limit your data from a visualization standpoint. Data is captured within our ELN platform, where we have distinguished products that can help you, but all of the visualization aspects, as well as all the statistical analysis, are performed through Zipper Spotfire. If you could get the next slide, please. Yes, great. So we've seen this already, right? Just to reiterate, and we kind of looked at what that ultimate goal is, but we indicated that there are multiple steps during that process in order to achieve that ultimate goal of being able to make data-driven decisions. So we're here within this panel and all of our panelists together to kind of discuss how you can actually capture all of that information. What are the things you should keep in consideration when going into these type of digital transformation journeys. Next slide, please. As mentioned, it starts with the foundation, right? It starts for most organizations by finding the tools and capabilities within those platforms to facilitate their electronic record keeping, right, within the lab. And in order to do that, you need strong foundational capabilities within those platforms. You will need capabilities to register information. You need to have an audit trail, like who has done what at which specific point in time. You might want to have some capabilities around project management. You need to be able to search all of your information, but also have capabilities to report that. All of those strong foundational aspects combined results in the ability to transform the labs. And we have been working with organizations across the globe, including in India, to kind of help them to streamline data capture and analytics in these wide varieties of labs. So whether your user community is doing method development in an analytical lab, whether you're doing formulation development to find the next best material, or whether you are a process chemist trying to find, let's say, route optimizations in order to be able to be more efficient, safer, or cost efficient to generating the materials or the synthesis that you would like. Those are all the capabilities that we facilitate there. If I could go to the next slide, please. So here are a couple, let's say, important aspects that I think all of us should keep in consideration when we're going on these digital transformation journey. One thing is there is no one system of truth. Right? It is very uncommon that there will be only one application within your organization that will contain all of that information. So a couple of lessons that we have learned and that we always try to teach towards our customers is that you need to take into consideration that the data needs to flow. right? So one thing to keep in consideration is that the data needs to flow between systems, right? It is very common that organizations will have an ELN and potentially a LIMS system, and it might have a bespoke registration system. In some cases, it might all be ours, but in some cases, this is actually a kind of a heterogeneous environment. So one thing to be of importance is that when you connect these systems, that you think about common identifiers, right? What is the information that is important between systems to be able to link the data together? And if you then look within that system, you need to take into consideration certain challenges that you might face around how data needs to be entered. In some cases, it's very easy to enter in information in Word documents, Excel, PowerPoints, and images. But that means that that information is semi-structured. So you can get it out of the system, but when you would like to link information or be able to make decisions based on information across multiple systems, that might increase the order of magnitude of the challenge there. So keeping into consideration that most of these systems also have the ability to enter in structured data, where you might have identifiers and tables and columns, that will actually help you to kind of achieve your ultimate goal in order to make your digital transformation project a success. Could you have the next slide, please? And this will be our final slide before I kind of thank Praveen for us giving the opportunity to present, and I'm very looking forward to our panel discussions. But it's not only the application that matters, right? There are a couple of very crucial aspects to take into consideration when you're implementing such a digital transformation strategy. One is the vendor that you're working with. Whether they have the experience and the know-how to understand your science and have the ability and services organization that can help you actually implement those solutions successfully. The relationship that you have, and it's very powerful for me always to see that with the speakers that we have, they have a great relationship not only with their vendor, but they also have a great relationship with their internal stakeholders. The change management and the empowerment of these individuals within your organizations are crucial of making such a digital transformation strategy a success. It is about understanding their workflows, their critical aspects, and how to map that with the desire to be able to make data-driven decisions. And that can't be done by one individual. That is a collective group of individuals from both the customer as well as the vendors that stand side by side and form a very cohesive team in order to drive that digital transformation project through. And once you've been able to do that from the ground up, kind of facilitate that workflow, drive how you capture and collaborate in step one, how you organize the workflow and make sure that your data is connected between systems and that it has a certain structure to it when you would like to be able to make data-driven decisions in order to reach that ultimate goal, the top of the mountain, and where you have seen how Manish was very elegantly describing how you can actually do efficiency dashboards, route optimization dashboards, SAR dashboards, as even confining and describing, let's say, how to analyze and publish instrument data to your corporate repository. And with that, I would like to thank everybody for listening in. I'm going to hand it back to Praveen to kind of facilitate our panel discussion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Patrick and Manish, for a very informative presentation and also talking about the various information that can be provided or that can be modeled using the software that you do have. Now let me begin the panel discussion and let me open it up. We have 2 tracks for all our panelists, and each will have 4 to 5 minutes for each track. And in the last, we will open up for Q&A. And during the course of the panel discussion, we will also have quiz on the basis of the presentation that both Patrick and Manish has made. So our first speaker is Mr. Kapil Kumar. He is the Chief Scientific Officer, SRF Limited. 25 years of experience at SRF, and he's focused on growth initiatives, strategy, and quality systems. and focus on ISO systems and quality control. He is very passionate about document flow and heads two R&D center, one located quite far. Both the centers are, one in the north and another in south, in Bhiwadi in Haryana and Chennai in Tamil Nadu. So, sir, wanted to know your views. How has been the digital transformation journey, and how do we see the pain points about different solutions talking to each other or converging so that it makes sense to you in the long run? And as Patrick talked about, that 85% of the scientists or 85% of the time for scientists goes to locate where the information is, keeping that into background if we not wanted to know your views. Over to Mr. Kapil Kumar.
Thanks, Praveen, and good afternoon to all the speakers, panelists, and delegates. So as Patrick said in the beginning that a lot of times scientists...
Would request you to be closer to the mic so that...
am I audible? Okay, let me speak a little louder. Am I okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now, sir.
Okay. So as Patrick said, that a lot of time is spent by the scientist in searching for the information, and that's very true because we come from the time when we used to search the chemical abstracts. And I remember that long time back, we made the first foray into the digitalization thing when we went for the softwares like STN and SciFinder and Reaccess. So that was the start where we started our digitalization journey. And the next thing that we did was that we went into two major systems. One was the electronic lab notebook and another was the product lifecycle management, the PLM system. What I can say is that what we needed at that time was that all these softwares you need to first actually customize to your individual requirements. And every company will have as is flow and the current flow that the company is actually having at that point of time. And transitioning that as is to an electronic system needs the customization of the software to the individual company's needs. So this is one of the things that we did very thoroughly. And we actually went through 2 cycles of optimizations in both these systems. And now we are at a level that all the labs that we have, they are at quite, I would say, relaxed or comfortable as far as the usage is concerned. I mean, this is just the document flow journey, but if you talk about the digitization at a larger scale, then right from the literature search to entering the data into the system that the scientists generate, and collecting the data from the instruments. And collecting the data from the instruments, putting all that together, whether the instruments of the synthesis lab or the analytical lab. And also, once you have put all these things together, then comes the next challenge, that how do you integrate all this to the next customer's process? So in our company, we are having quite an engineering intensive process development and process chemistries. So engineers also play a great role here. So we need to actually then make this data talk to their systems. So one point, as you said, that how the journey has been good, right from almost 25 years now into the digitalization. But the integration of all the systems is still something that is a challenge as of now, because these systems, since they are based on different platforms, and it's not very easy for the IT teams to actually make them talk to each other. So that is one of the challenges. And at SRF, we have been quite fortunate that our top management has been always very providing a very conducive environment for going into the newer technologies. And the research ecosystem right now, we are, as I said, we are trying to integrate the scientists' data with the engineers' data. So that has also come, that has also started, and that's still in the nascent stages. And as you said in one of your introductions, that there are silos. So these silos need to be integrated through digitalization. And definitely we can get a lot of competitive advantage. And as about these visual tools, the visual optimization tools that were spoken just now. So these can give the R&D managers great handle on their efficiencies. But the only, I would end this first monologue of mine by saying only this, that efficiencies in the R&D, the calculation of that is a pretty difficult task. So probably I would look a little more at the visualization tools, because as we said that we are still into the formative stages of these things. So that was a great insight, that you can use a lot of visualization tools for the optimization, etc., and then how to actually translate that into efficiency. So those are my views.
Sir, two supplementary questions. One is with respect to you talked about integrating scientist data with engineer data. So what are the problematic areas that one could think of so that it would be easier for Patrick and Manish to take care of? And the second thing is with the software companies or with the software solutions that we are seeing, with the new feature or with the new versions coming up, the prices also gets added up or padded up, whatever we can call it. So just I'm giving you a ballpark figure that in last 5 years, the software cost has at least doubled or tripled. So how that can be taken care of, that irrespective of the versions, the cost remains the same, so that it is easier for you to organize for more number of licenses or more number of people, so that they can all have individual systems at the same time. So over to Kapilji.
Yeah, so to respond to your first question about the integration of the chemist's data to the engineer's data. So the data in the ELN, which is in the form of, let's say, tables and charts. So the engineers deal with these different softwares. For example, Vizimix is there for mixing, and for distillation they have Aspen Plus and all those. So as I said, it's a little far-fetched at this moment, but we are trying for it. So what my ultimate goal one day would be that if these systems can actually talk to each other, and engineers can actually pick up the data directly from the distillation setups from the lab, which is in the ELN system kind of systems, and then actually use it. This is going to save a lot of time, because right now a lot of time goes into the translation. Coming to the second part of the question about the costs, definitely, see, all said and done, India remains a poor country. It's a third world country. We are poor as far as the economic parameters are concerned. One distressing thing that I have seen of late is that somehow the pricing models of almost all the software companies, they have sort of changed drastically in last 4 or 5 years with the licensing systems and the cost of each license, then the annual maintenance cost and all that. And somewhere I get a feeling that actually there can be a huge level of penetration further into a country like India if the costs can be taken care of, because here, let's say if your digitalization costs or the maintenance of the digitalization runs into crores, becomes a little difficult for getting those kind of funds. So, and one last thing that I would like to say is that I may be wrong here, but somehow India has been growing, but still we are pretty far from the first world. So the prices should be much more differential, and if they can be made a little more transparent. And I'm not only talking about PerkinElmer here, I'm talking about all the sorts of, because I deal with at least 20 different software platforms. So with the Western countries, they can have a different model, and for the countries like India, a different model can be adopted, and it would be beneficial, because then many companies will take this jump, I would say, into digitalization jump.
Thank you, Kapilji, for being very honest and giving a very critical feedback. And now I come to Mr. Vinod Sivanan Onmute. He is the head knowledge management. Vinod, are you there?
Yes, I am there. I was answering one of the questions raised by the attendee. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, that's right. On the chat, I am there.
Okay. So he's the head of knowledge management, RT Industries Limited. Just a brief on Vinod. He has filed 300 patents with respect to different companies, and his patent around 150 has been approved. 16 years of experience in lab and intellectual property management, mainly patents and trademarks, which involves property management through digital platforms. Prior experience includes patent drafting and filing, patent prosecution and litigation, tailor-made highly literature landscapes. So with this background, I come back to the panel discussion question for you, Mr. Vinod. Best practices would you recommend to other scientific R&D organizations based on whatever that you have learned in the 16 years, and how useful or how it would be achievable for a successful digital transformation journey going forward? So over to Vinod Sivanan.
Yeah. Thank you, Praveen Prashant. The best practices, which usually is since RT Industries has just began its journey of setting up at new R&D center at Mahape, and we have ourselves declared RT Research and Technology Center as a paperless laboratory. So it eventually means that we will be fully digitization, working on digitized projects involving various softwares. What currently I have observed at ARTC is that we have a dispersed laboratories. For example, one is at Vapi, and the other one is coming up at at Mahape. So these two laboratories are not talking to each other actually, maybe because earlier laboratory was based on paper. So so the best practice, what to begin with, what I have been doing is translating the paper documents into digitized form and entering into the ELN database, so that this tacit knowledge of the organization is available to all on a click in the ELN. So this is one thing. So what we will also we are also planning is Internet of Things. We will be generating certain Internet of Things within ourselves, so that information will be available. We'll connect various things together, laboratory, key identifying key human resources who have the knowledge of within the industry, and then there are various databases and
your voice is not
digitization at procurement level, optimization, and is it now clear?
Would request if you can switch off your video and on the audio, so we can optimize on the bandwidth part.
Yeah, I will do that. Yeah, fine. So what I was referring to is we are building Internet of Things that are currently available by digitizing our past tacit knowledge, which will be making it available to the scientists henceforth. So that is the first time that we have done. The best practice, I would say, is maybe this is usually not practiced, is having entire plan of things and putting it on a paper, rather than what currently is happening is that we feel the need of certain software and digitization, and in bits and pieces we are implementing digitization. So there's no such one consultant that, or maybe there's no such services that are currently available wherein a whole package for R&D can be tailor-made as per the requirement of the organization. So as I have seen, I need to procure, say for example, laboratory Cygnus notebook from Perkin-Elman. I need to go to some other databases where I need to procure a database, say for example, Crystal Orbit, or maybe SciFinder even. And then I go back again to some else third party where I procure artificial intelligence software and design of experiment software. So these all things are not all are scattered together. So it's not easy for a person, the organization wherein to collect all the things in one place at the start of the beginning. So best practice I would say is to have a perfect plan of R&D and what you are looking at. So setting up a goal and would be the best practice first thing. And then to make this success happen, there has to be awareness within the organization. And there has to be a lot of training that needs to go into people and making them aware and the processes flows. So these practice and dynamic changes that will be coming into softwares and upgrades, those also requires a lot of communication through and fro. So in short, to sum up, my query would be to have a foolproof plan, to set up a goal, have a plan of training and awareness, and open communication and adaptiveness. That I think would be a best practice for the organization to achieve a digitalization goal that may be N-1 or maybe end goal. Yes, Prashant.
Vinodji, in absence of this, because presently, as you said, it cannot be customized as per a requirement, or there is nothing in that universe who can do almost all the things that you talked about. So in absence of this, how are you trying to solve the problem of the lab and also trying to get the product on time? Also try to see that the costs are being maintained so that you are able to get a good valuation at the same time. So you have to do multiple things at the same time with whatever that is existing. So keeping that into view, how are you planning, or how are you completing your exercise, sir? Vinodji.
Yeah, first thing what we did here is prioritizing the things. So for example, we prioritize highly required softwares or digitized products. So one of them was Signals Notebook. Then was design of experiment software that falls that we prioritize, maybe because that will also eventually decrease the load of setting up the experiments by maybe 50%. If the optimization is very good, goes good. And then we also focused on some artificial intelligence. So we try to take the help of artificial intelligence in designing a route of synthesis for molecules. Though currently our molecules seem to be very of maybe.
We have lost you, Vinod. Hello. In the meantime, Vinodji gets connected. Now I come to.
Will be coming out from RT Industries. So softwares wherein adapted trade programs for the and awareness is also there. So to sum up, it's the prioritization that is coming up, and then eventually we are also going into procurement that will also then support the procurement digitization, wherein the chemicals that would be coming up for scientists would be easily available in time. So these are the suggestions that I would recommend industry to follow.
Thank you, Vinodji. Now I come to Ankit Agarwal. He is the head research IT and scientific computation for R&D for Pi Industries Limited. With 15 years of experience, Ankit has been into diverse roles of handling planning to strategy, solution ideation to delivery, business analysis to consultancy, and transforming IT to building futuristic organization, etc. A champion of digital transformation and automation of business process, he has led several programs and projects at Pi and DuPont. In his current role at Pi, his responsibilities include driving innovation through molecular modeling and scientific computation. So trying to understand, sir, what are the challenges in terms of integration of data systems within the company and outside the company, because some of the processes are being outsourced to third party, or partners. So how difficult or it is easy it is to see that how these data are accumulated, and finally we get to know how things are moving from the company's perspective. So over to Mr. Ankit Agarwal.
Sure. Thanks, and good evening, all. So to take that question, Praveen, what I would like to first cover is what is the requirement of having a diversified outsourcing methodology in today's time, and how do the data scatter across the continents? So if you see, especially in India, the R&D budgets are not too high. Every company, be it pharma, be it agrochemicals, they are trying to invest into R&Ds so that at least they would be able to foster or take out benefits of leverage their research processes, which they already have in terms of CRAMS businesses earlier. I mean, we are a unique agrochemical company where we've started our own discovery unit 6 years back, and we're fostering into that. So it's very difficult to be very capital intensive to create labs or create that infrastructure which covers end-to-end research and development. And that is where you tend to outsource or partner with a lot of companies, a lot of CROs, and that's where your data keeps on spreading across the globe, right? With this, I mean, definitely the integration becomes a challenge, because your data, I mean, your research, the part where your novel compound gets created is in India. When you are collaborating across the globe with various partners, the compound needs to move from one place to another, right? And not only that, the compliances requires you to follow a very secured environment where the data could be shared, the data could be transferred, and then the data could also be brought back for your intelligence in the future, right? And that's where, I mean, there are challenges with respect to data security. There are challenges with respect to data integration, but then technology has advanced so much in today's time that there is a solution for each and every phases in discovery or research available. If I talk about, the first phases, which is the research phase, starting from drug discovery to the chemical synthesis to biological profiling, we have systems like electronic lab notebooks from PerkinElmer, which we deal with and using them efficiently. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to follow two mantras, which is standardization is differentiation, and simplification is sustainability. So what we want to do is we want to standardize our processes and look at existing tools and technologies and fit these systems into those architecture. We don't want to scatter our technologies. We don't want to scatter our tool set such that it becomes difficult for us to integrate them in the future. So when we look at on-premise collaboration for our internal labs, we look at on-premise electronic lab notebook. And when we look at outsourcing of those digital content, then we look at a cloud-based electronic lab notebook, maybe from the same vendor or a different vendor, but then the technologies which are interrelated and which can relate to each other and talk about. When I say about simplification, I talk about we don't customize our processes. So, we tend to use the out-of-the-box features of the products. What we do is we cater our processes based on the tools and technologies which we have to use. So we are trying to build a digital culture, first of all. So unless we build a digital culture, we will not be able to drive innovation. We will not be able to propose or maybe get those scientists onboarded to use those systems for us. And then we will not be able to integrate whether on-premise or outsourced data together. And then the systems for analytics, intelligence will be a failure. So that's what we do. That's what we do to cater that. So there is a need in today's time. We can't do everything internally. We can't do everything within the boundaries of a geographical location. So then the partners are being scattered across the globe now. The accessibility, the viability would be important. So we do take care of that, but then we do champion we do partner with our business through that to first understand the technology, then to probably inculcate the business process into it. That's what we do.
So what good to see Sanjay Nanda Wadikar has joined. He's the Director IT Cipla. Good afternoon, Sanjay.
Good afternoon, and my apologies, I couldn't join on time. There was some business exigency which I need to address But thank you very much for hosting me here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking time out from your schedule. I know pharma companies is doing a good job of doing a lot of things during COVID times, right from drug to vaccine, and all of them are very much required for India as well as for outside India as well. So I'm really thankful that you took time out and be present in our e-conference. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Ankit, I needed to ask you one short question. Is the best practices recommendation to scientific R&D organization? What if you can talk about just the steps? What would be which will make them best scientific R&D organization? So what you should do?
Okay. So I will start from the very top. The first thing what is required is the commitment from the top management. Unless there is a commitment from the top management, you would not be able to propose solutions. You will not be able to adapt those solutions, and then you will not be able to roll out things like you would like to do. Secondly, there has to be a strong trust between the business and the IT part. It's not that IT can replace businesses or they can do things on their own. It's just that we understand each one of their processes while working with them. I mean, if you see, every organization would have different functions. They would have chemistry, they would have bio, they would have knowledge management, and so on. They would have process development. Probably IT is the only team which connects with all of them. I mean, they try and understand most of the processes, each one of the processes, and then they understand that and they try to build or get an insight into those and see what is the connection between them and how do they connect the data points together. So the second thing would be the trust between the two, the various teams across to do digitization. I think third would be having a very clear and ambitious targets to do that. So what needs to be achieved? What is the first step? You can't build Rome in one day. So you need to pick up processes which are critical to you first. Find those, identify the needs, identify the business problems, find out solutions, do a lot of proof of concepts, right? Then identify the tools, the budget for it, take commitments, and then do it. Fourth, a project has to be sponsored and maybe governed by a business leader. So unless you have a business leader on board, you would not be able to roll it out. The change management which Kapil talked about would have been very difficult. And that's what we also follow. So, I mean, most of our projects are actually led by business leaders. IT can be just licensing teams to do that. So a business has to be involved. They have to be a part of each and every stages of the delivery. The fourth thing is the training and the change management processes. So we don't, once the system is rolled out, we don't allow, we do a lot of control and monitoring, and we don't allow anything to go offline from there. So be it a communication, be it an email, I mean, attachment to an email. So we do have a system for every kind of content. So the basic ground rule or the thumb rule for us is first think what is the right place to do it, and then put it up there. So be it a structured data, unstructured data, be it collaboration, communication. So we do have a system in place for everything what is required. Just that we just need to identify those things and then do it. And then when in doubt, please ask. So that's what we follow with our business members also. And our relationship is such that, I mean, we've held out throughout at every stage to them, and which has led us to do, I mean, follow each and every step of the best practices which we've laid down. And in the end, I think regular audits is very important to keep a check on what is the, I mean, and to also obtain feedback of change improvisation which is required in the system. So, I mean, what you built might not be the need after 3 years or 4 years. So, I mean, we've already been using ELN for the past 4 or 5 years, but it might require a change to the new environment which we are in. So that is also required in the end.
So thanks, Ankit, for your what we can say very to the point explanation on what the company should focus on. Before I come back to Sanjay, let me also ask a few quiz questions from our delegates who have participated. And I would request them to please type in their answers in the chat window. And whoever gives the first correct answer will be the winner. So my first question is, what is Perkin-Elmer tagline? I repeat, what is Perkin-Elmer tagline? So I request you to please type in your answers in the chat window. Now, after having what we can say made it interactive for our delegates, Sanjay has around 25 years of experience, Director IT, CIPLA, Head of Applications Technology, Manager IT, Sun Pharmaceutical Industries, and he also has been a founder. So he has gone through that startup banks with AVN Infotech Private Limited. So now I wanted to understand from you in this e-conference or in this webinar, sir, what should be the digitization strategy for labs? Because labs is where everything is possible. And the way India did for the vaccine, I think if we can do for other things, the day is not far off when we can be the leaders and we can lead the way. So we can be torchbearer for others. And that also gives us a lot of forex with respect to exports, and it also solves our India problem. So over to Sanjay. I'm asking a very general question, but its implications are large, Sanjay.
Yeah, thank you, Praveen. I was going to say so. The question is very small, but it has a flavors. It has multi-dimensional answers possibly, and I'll try to cover a couple of dimensions and try to answer with the best of my ability. So when you're talking about the strategies, the word strategy itself means you need to think beyond 4 or 5 years or maybe beyond that, right? And that is where you are calling this as a strategy. Definitely the strategy should be a part of your organization strategy, and it is very important, and Ankit has covered it a little bit. Very important where organization is heading in terms of your digitalization. Now, I'll probably segment it to only lab digitalization because this is the area of discussion as of now for us. It is very important to understand from an organization perspective where organization is heading. You may have multiple objectives for digitalization. For example, if the core of your objective is compliance, then you would be having a strategy to comply the lab, and then you need to think about implementation of various applications, controls, or processes. If your strategy is towards optimization of processes and reducing cycle time, then you will be having choice of your solutions, and accordingly you will be looking for the solutions in those areas. If your strategy talks about creating a lab and the data consumption for decision support system, then you would be having a strategy and choices of solutions. This is the strategy, right? So this is multidimensional area where you have to think about what is that core you would like to achieve. Now, your organization strategy could be a combination of all. You want to have process optimization, you want to have good ROI, you need to be a compliant one, you want to be a compliant one. At the same time, you would like to use the data which has been produced in the laboratory and create a platform where your people can take a decision. This is the data. And this is a strategy what we had for CIPLA when we started working with Perkin-Elmer and other vendor at initial stage. We were having a clear strategy which was signed by the top management, and it was a elevated strategy. And we started with RFP process. First of all, we reached out, as Ankit mentioned, you need to have a lot of POCs so that you'll be ensuring that you'll be working with the right vendor. So this is one of the area where you should be focusing. Ensure that you have a right strategy and ensure that you have a right plan for implementation as well, which is a subset of the strategy. And basis that you then discover or you then search for solutions which are catering to your requirements. First and foremost, I think when you are having your clear strategy, you need to drill down to a level what exactly you want to do from an execution perspective. So write down your specs, write down your requirements very clearly, write down your processes and the processes which you would like to customize, or if at all not customize the configurations. What processes which would go under configuration, what processes would remain as the standard processes. Once you have clear understanding about your requirements, then search for a right vendor. And of course, we need to have a lot of POCs which we would be having with multiple vendors. Fortunately, after 4 or 5 years, there are few vendors which are in the market. Hence, your POC segment has been funneled down. You can bank on a couple of vendors like Elmer and few others, and do your POCs. I'm sure all the vendors are equally good, but it's completely basis your need and the implementation strategy whom you would work with. That is one part when you are at the planning stage. Second, when you are actually in the projection stage, you need to consider what team size you would be employing for your project or the program management. My advice would be, I think, as Ankit mentioned, you need to have a business taking responsibility of this particular initiatives. Because business owes the processes and business knows how to work with the processes and what can be done with the processes. And the entire assessment of the new solutions will be done by the business folks. We call them as the SME, subject matter expertise. And these are the guys who would be managing change management very effectively, because these are the people who are coming from the business and they are going back to the business for the solutions. The adoption and acceptance of the solution is much higher when one SME is actually presenting the solution to the business, and that has worked wonderfully in our organization. So it was a project organization which was working for a project, and this is the strategy implementation plan. This team was working almost for 1.5 years, and then the implementation went through. Coming back to the organization acceptance and change management, I think you need to really work hard on that particular piece, because lab is very critical area for any organization, and the processes in labs are very critical. Fortunately, we do have solutions as of now, but before 5 years or before 6 years, the situation was not so good. And because the criticality and specialization of the area, not all the applications were supporting these kind of functionalities. Unfortunately, we had a good partner as Elmer. We were having almost all the functionalities. Of course, we had some configurations in their product, but you need to be working with the right partner who understand your business, who understand the processes, and who understand how to give a technical solution for those processes. That is another important area which I would like to touch upon. Third, from the implementation and adoption perspective, I think the level of change management you would be bringing in your organization would actually give you the written in terms of acceptance of the solution right from day one. If you are working with your customers through your SMEs or directly through the project management office, it will actually give a lot of inputs for you during the configuration stage. And once we have the right inputs which are validated by the SME, by the business, your change management would be easy. So constant touch with the end user, constant touch with the business user is something a key you should be considering while implementing this kind of applications. And overall, as I mentioned, you need to consider what level of configurations you would like to build during the configuration stage. If at all, if you are saying that I would like to just retain the records, then there are ways and means to configure the system. You can just pull up one Word form and just write your experimental data, and you can keep the data as it is. So that data would be immortal. Though it is in electronic format, it will be retaining in your database for a long time. But your strategy is to get inside the data, then you probably need to think little differently. You probably need to create some fields, or maybe you need to format some metadata around the fields. And so that when you are having the implementation, when data gets pumped into the system, you can get into the system and work with the database and bring the data on some dashboards and all. So it's clearly a mandate from a strategy perspective of what kind of strategy you are trying for your organization and where you are heading next 5 to 6 years. If you are clear on the strategy, I think implementation would be a little easy, or otherwise you would be having a lot of change management after implementation of this application. Now, one downside of change management is because these applications are GXP application, GLP application, there is a big cycle for validation, big cycle for change implementation, which would be taking a little more time than usual when you're in production, because At one hand, your production is already going on. If you want to make some changes in the production, you'll be having a lot of constraint for creating the change controls, implementing the change controls, managing the changes, and then doing the validation cycle. So my take would be here, take some time, work during the initial stage for defining the strategy, clearly make some mandates for implementation, and then have a good relation with the business, work on their expectation and draw the clear map for implementation of the projects in the lab area. Now, coming back to the digitalization, I think we are at an age where everything is getting digitalized, and the pharmaceutical world is no more laggard now. We have some fabulous examples where entire ecosystem of laboratory has been combined together in terms of integrations, and we are getting a lot of data from the instruments which are getting pumped into a system, and we are getting a benefit of technology digitalization to see the data as inferences for certain decisions. Like for example, if you have multiple data coming from the instruments, and if you want to understand the quality of your batch, then traditionally you need to go to each and every report and understand what is being given in this report, what is my pH level in this report, what is my quality of substance in other reports. So you have opportunity to bring all these data points together and get into one dashboard report and then understand the quality of the batch. So that is something what we can achieve through the digitalization. And it is very important for any organization to define the strategy, what they want to do with the data, what they want to do with the applications when you're defining your strategy for digitalization in labs. That's my take, Praveen. I know this is a little longer, but still we have a lot of things to cover.
One question from the presentation, one from the talk that you said. If there is a mix of compliance, optimization, and DSS, so what would be your take in brief, sir?
Can you just come once again?
You said it is compliance, it is optimization of resources, and creating a lab for DSS, which is a decision support system. But okay, in case it's a mix of the three, then how do you plan? In brief, if you can talk about in 30 seconds, sir.
Yeah, I'm coming back to the same point what I discussed earlier. You need to define what you want to achieve, and in most of the cases, most common cases, you would be having all three as your preferred options. First and foremost, I think you need to look in the market, which are the products which are giving this kind of returns to you in terms of your optimization in cycle time and ROI and the capability of using the data for further data decision system. Fortunately, we have a couple of solutions which are there in the market, and PerkElmer is offering one of them. Most important thing is when you're configuring your product, you have to be very careful how you're configuring your product. Of course, vendor team like PerkElmer and other vendors, they are with you, but end of the day, it is your baby, and you need to double check what you are planning to do after 4 or 5 years, whether the foundation is laid at point when you are implementing the system. So during configuration stage, it is very critical for us to look back on all function specs, look back on all the requirement specs, and ensure that right configuration is happening, so that going forward you do not have to again go back on the configuration and do some reconfigurations in the system. So that is a stage where you need to ensure that all the objectives what you have consider for implementation of system is been taken care of.
Thanks, Sanjay. Now I come back to the PerkElmer team, and I would request them if they can talk about the three key steps in data to decision journey to truly realize the benefits of digital transformation.
Yeah, I think I've heard great input from the panelists, right? Taking into consideration what your approach is, what your plan is, to balance the level of configuration versus customization, and keeping into consideration all of the different stakeholders that you have. So to come back to your question, Praveen, right? And we talked about this a little bit in the presentation. There are really 3 crucial steps, right? And the answers to all of those steps will be dependent on your stakeholder that you're speaking with, right? But it's all about kind of first step, analyze what you already have available, how can you make that electronic, right? And making sure that along those journey you have IT around the security of that data, that you have IP around what type of auditory information is there. Right? All of those aspects are crucial in that first initial steps. The second step is organize your workflow. We heard different spokespeople from different type of organizations. They all mentioned and expressed their needs for their specific scientists, right? And that's really the crucial step, and that will be very different between the different types of organizations. If you would look at the speakers that we have here today, and you will look at their specific systems, you will see that they're all differently configured and set up. What is important there is what we discussed already, is to make sure that you try to keep as close to the product as you can, right? Configure versus writing code, right? But that you also make sure that it supports your scientist, and that you can actually do something with that data moving forward, right? The third aspect, right, is when you've been able to document, and you have all of your stakeholders on board, and you have all of the change management done for your specific scientist, then you can start getting value out of your information. So it is a journey, right? It is a journey that you're on together with your vendor of choosing, with the organization, and all of the stakeholders within your organization to be able to reach that ultimate goal of the summit.
Another was, what would be your approach in terms of implementation of a digital transformation project?
Yeah, so thanks for kind of asking that question, right? It first starts with, and we've heard that a couple of times already, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? And that will be different for each organization. And we heard PI kind of speak about their ecosystems, where they have outsourced partners all across the globe, right? That's a problem statement in itself. We've worked with Cipla, right, on their business processes. So every problem statement with each organization will be different, and you need to make sure that you've analyzed that in a good amount of extent to understand why they're actually going on this journey. Second step is what is their current landscape? Right? What applications are already in use? How is the data being stored there? What is relevant? Right? What CDS systems is used? Is there already a LIMS in place? Is there an SAP system where information around the instruments or cost of raw materials will be available? Right? So what is that ecosystems of tools that is available, right? And then the third aspect is how do you model that all together, right? And if you have your right vendor, and if you have the product of kind of your choosing, right, it is important that that's in lockstep with each other, right? The vendor as well as your organizations are in lockstep with each other, and that you can do clear and true ROI analysis at every step of your process, right? Because while you're on that journey together, you can steer and adjust, right? And as Sanjay already said, you kind of need to look a little bit further than the next 6 months or the next 9 months, right? These are long-term projects. So you kind of need to think about where you would like to be as an organization in a couple of years from now, right? Why are you doing this? What are you trying to achieve? And if you keep that long mindset and you're in lockstep with your vendor, I'm sure that all of your organizations will be successful with implementing solutions on this.
Thanks, Patrick. Before I come back to Sanjay once again, this is the second question for the delegates. So my second question, and I would request if you can type your answers in the chat window. What is 2019 revenue for Perkin-Elmer? I repeat, what is 2019 revenue for Perkin-Elmer? Please type in your answers in the chat window. So I move to Sanjay. Sanjay, you have seen a lot of transformations on the technology side, and we will see many transformations even in future, 5 years down the line. So how easy or how difficult it is to dovetail these technologies or these trainings or these scientists to adapt these technologies and use it in the benefit of the company's strategy? How easy or difficult this task is, sir, and how do you see things moving in that direction? To Sanjay Nandawade.
Thanks. Varun. Unfortunately, there is no straightforward answer to this, whether it is easy or difficult. I'll try to contextualize it a little bit with certain examples. So when we are having a company strategy for making a digital labs, I think first and foremost, there is a company approach for digitalization of certain areas, like lab is one of the area. When we're having this kind of strategy, which is adopted by organization and drawn by organization, in a way, all of us are ready for that transformation journey, right? Now, right from IT to the business user, lab users, everybody knows that we are on a transformation journey. And fortunately, what has happened in Cipla, we were having a lot of transformational projects at that point in time. And electronic lab notebook, particularly, and laboratory information management system were two key projects during that period of time. And fortunately, I was leading both the projects. So I had a first-hand experience with the user. So first and foremost, I think you should able to answer one question. That is, what is in it for me, for each and every stakeholder? If you can answer this question for your CFO, then he would probably give you the budget approval. If you answer this question for the HOD, then he would be giving you a support, full support for the implementation. If you can answer this question for the end user, then he will be giving the full support for the implementation and he will be part of your change management. So it is very important for us to define the strategy for change management when you are particularly working with the fraternity like a scientist. From ages together, the scientist community has worked on paper, and it is difficult for them to transform from paper-based or Excel-based or Word-based systems to something like an electronic system, which would be having entire gamut of managing all your data sets, all your knowledge base, and then keeping a relevance of all this information which you have created over a period of your experimentation and work with that information. So very critically, you need to plan your change management, sit with them, understand what is their pain areas, prioritize the pain areas, not like you would be having answers to each and every question on day one. You can't really give answers to all the questions on go live date, the D date. You need to have that prior engagement with the user saying that these are the priority areas which we are considering as of now. These are the areas which would be considered in phase 2, phase 3, whatever. Once we have that engagement, once you build that clarity, there is a clear-cut support which you will be getting from the business users. This is from a technology adoption side. Now, when you are talking about the digital transformation for any organization, it is imperative that you would be using the data for your business decision purpose, right? And when you are having this kind of initiatives, when you are having clear mandates that you would be using this data for supporting the decisions, then you need to plan your system implementation accordingly. You need to think twice when you are defining any configurations. Take help of vendor, ask them multiple questions. What would happen if I change this particular form into this particular format? If I bring a field which would be giving me an accurate value so that I can get that value later on some dashboards or something like that. So as Patrick also mentioned, you need to think little forward and you need to understand what is your business priority, what is the aim of digitalization in your area. As I mentioned in my earlier discussion, you have to have a clear-cut understanding about your organization priorities, organization strategy, and basis that the strategy for your digitalization would happen. Now, what is going to happen in the future? Of course, pandemic has taught a lesson to us that not everything was granted, or not everything would happen as we were having that sense before 2 or 3 years down the line, right? Everything has had changed in the pandemic. Unfortunately, we were having a complete work from home, readiness in terms of our lab operations, and our scientists, largely the reviewer team and GL team, could able to work on our electronic lab notebook, working from their home itself. How this got possible? We thought of having the hybrid implementation approach, meaning I had a mantra of implementation. When we were thinking about implementation, the system should follow the user. No matter the user is working in your corporate office or user is working in some of your locations, he should be able to access the information basis his authentications or basis his authorization from anywhere he would like to work from. And I think that was one area where we had a lot of challenges initially, because generally whatever applications we had in this area are two-tier application, meaning you have a server and you have a client. But you need to then define your technology landscape, which will support this kind of requirements. It is not a complete cloud-based solution, but it is a hybrid solution which can incline toward the cloud. And you can achieve this by using some virtualization layers, right? This has given us a lot of help during this work from home. And even forward, if you are looking forward after 2 or 3 years, I think work from home could be a new normal. And you need to define your system architecture so that people can access comfortably from any digital devices. It could be a laptop, it could be a tablet, or it could be anything like a desktop which is at user's home. So that connectivity is something you need to consider when you are defining your implementation plan. You need to also take into consideration a lot of systems are getting integrated or would get integrated when you are talking about a complete digital journey. And Ankit just mentioned very briefly that you need to understand what ecosystem of instruments, what ecosystem of integrations you are planning to have during your implementation stage or after your implementation stage. So that provision you need to create while doing the configurations of any system. So overall, if you think that you are planning for a system of next 5 years, your thought process should be aligned with your strategy. Your thought process should be aligned with your future, what you want to achieve from the implementation of this kind of systems. Now, ELN could be one example. There are multiple systems in labs which are getting implemented. Are those systems are capable to extract the data, or are those systems are capable to exchange the data? And if yes, then what form and format those systems would be extracting or exchanging the data? Accordingly, you need to plan your digital platform. And for that, I think there are multiple tools which are available in the market. There are some custom build tools which certain vendors provides to get the data, collect the data, and bring into one single platform. You probably might have your data lake in your organization, which would also help for collating all the data into one place, and from there you can consume the data basis the business requirement. So overall, I think when you are thinking about digital transformation, think holistically. Don't think only from one system implementation perspective. Think holistically and think completely in terms of architecture. Think about one system which is getting implemented as a server or client-based system, another system which is getting implemented as a subscription system. How do we integrate those systems? So your thought process should go into that area and understand overall picture of the digitalization journey in your lab areas. And that is something I think I will urge all the listeners to consider while defining their roadmap for the digital journey at their organization.
Thank you, Sanjay. Ankit, if you can talk about, we are moving towards automated and intelligent world, and what we are seeing is 3D printing or automated labs or voice-based labs. So how do you see these in times to come, and how it will get integrated into the lab system? So over to Ankit.
Thanks, Praveen, for that question. First of all, if you see, for any R&D, the three major objectives is to have to predict failure faster, so that they don't keep on spending a lot of money in researching, and they don't have to be keeping attached to themselves to one objective which they have picked up for the research area. Second would be agility in decision making, right? So that there is faster, they could take decisions faster. They could probably skip some steps to reach out. And that's where you've seen vaccines coming up in the market earlier. And third thing is diversification of their portfolios. So, we are an agrochemical company. There are news in the industry that we are talking to getting into pharma. Similarly, there are a lot of other companies which we have diversified portfolios. SRF is also one of them. So, companies are doing all of that. And when we look at all of this, then probably the need for faster and newer technologies comes into picture. So first of all, you talked about artificial intelligence or automating intelligence. So that is a critical element. For the first step is digital transformation. So you need to have your systems on digital platforms for building on that kind of intelligence. From those systems comes your analytics first, and then you try to train your systems processes so that intelligence could be derived. So as Manish presented in his presentation earlier, so unless you had your data into ELN, those kind of analytics on Spotfire wouldn't be possible. Unless you have Spotfires ready, the third phase of softwares like signal lead discovery would not be possible, right? So you would not be able to create a data lake. You will not be able to achieve machine learning and artificial intelligence and so on. So all this is required. Now, if you see, to faster your research processes, you also need to focus upon drug discovery, because now you have data into ELN. You would be able to analyze your system so well that you will be able to predict what could be the best compound to have in your system. Or as IT, we can suggest the chemist what kind of compound they should focus upon. So there are tools, which we use, digital systems which we use for docking, for overlaying, like Schrodinger, like Suppresset. And when you actually link them with your data systems, which is Spotfire and ELN, probably you will be able to build on better ecosystems or design or drive innovation. And that's where, newer technologies like 3D innovation, 3D printing and all will help, so that scientists and IT can collaborate together to predict whether the particular compound would be efficient in the market or not, or whether there would be some toxicity or efficacy or there or not. So those kind of systems need to build in. Then third thing which you talked about, or you asked me, is about the future of lab notebooks. So if you see, there are still companies on paper lab notebooks. We are in an advanced phase of electronic lab notebooks, where we use for every other system, we use electronic lab notebooks. But then if we need to unlock the efficiencies, if we need to make it more productive, now we would have to reduce the effort the human interface have on these systems. And that's where, we have already started evaluating how could we have voice-based electronic lab notebook systems, where you could connect your systems to, ELNs to IoTs, which can capture your voices, and you can document those systems well. Because documenting and typing, we don't want them to waste their energies on. Now, extending that example forward, it's not only about voice-based systems or ELN. It is actually making systems more efficient and more productive. Like, for example, you have you build a structure-based systems, but then a lot of our intelligence also lies in unstructured content, like documents, PDFs, and presentations, which is a life for every research scientist in today's time. So what happens to structures in those presentations? What happens to the chemical content in those presentations and documents as well? So we are working on tools where we are doing structure-based searching on unstructured content, which is very critical. We have, all this information again now need to reorganize themselves into patent drafts, into IPs. So we do have patent drafting automatic tools, which we uses AI, machine learning. We have IP management tools to do that. So what we try to do is evaluate technology, adopt it fast, and then inculcate into the business processes, so that we don't lose on the fight to be first to file or first to invent in the market. So that's what we do.
Thanks, Ankit. Before we come to Kapil Kumarji, let me ask the third question from our delegate. And I would request them to please type in the chat window. Total customer of Perkin-Elmer. I repeat, total customers of Perkin-Elmer. Please type in your answers in the chat window. Now I come back to Kapilji. Sir, we are seeing a lot of technologies like quantum computing and supercomputing, and all these are really helpful in terms of molecular modeling, as well as finding new reactions. So how do you see these technologies 5 years down the line or before, and how affordable they would be if these are being utilized by, say, a group or more on a sharing model, if that can be possible or feasible? So over to Kapil Kumarji.
Thanks for the question. And you see, a chemist the ultimate thing in the digitalization and the artificial intelligence would be when a lot of decisions related to the chemistry, if they can be driven by the artificial intelligence or a very high level of computational data. So, for example, BASF, it was in the news that they have been, I think now for 3-4 years, using supercomputers to actually come out with new reactions. Bayer Crop Sciences also recently, there was a news that they were doing something in this area. I haven't heard of anything similar in India, but this is something that will be the, you can say, the holy grail for the chemists, when actually all the chemical rules can be put into the machine, and then we can actually get the answers which will be very far-fetched from a human point of view. So this is at this moment picking up in the West, and I hope that we get that sort of computing power, and this becomes a little more commercial than as it is today. And I think maybe, let's say, 3-4 years down the line, we may have some foray into this. And I'm talking about the mega computing here, because Reaccess and SciFinder and all these tools also give you some predictable chemistry, but that's at a very, very primitive level. I'm thinking of something which these giants like BASF and BCS actually are able to do.
But do you see it happening in a full scale, sir? Or do we see part by part these solutions coming? Because unless and until it is done in a 360-degree or the complete solution, it may not be helpful in the long run. And for that, you need to have, as we have been talking about, a converged platform where everything is being done. The system takes care, though it can, what we can say, connect with other systems parallelly at the same time. And finally, at the end of the day, you put the input, you get those from the IoT devices, you get from the equipment, you get those data. And after that, those data get processed, and finally you get an output at the same time. I'm just talking very simplistic. It may not be.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking actually.
So how do you see, as a scientist, how do you see all these things happening in the long run?
Yeah, that's more to do with the data that is experimentally driven. And the problem with the experimental driven data is that it is limited to the number of experiments that have been carried out till date. So that data is very simple. I mean, you put all the chemical abstracts and all these databases, and that's very simple. However, let's say, for example, if you want to do a reduction, and there are, let's say, n number of catalysts, n number of solvents, and then the structure and the activity relationship going through, and all those things happening. And if you look at today, the way scientists work, even if we talk about parallel synthesis and all, it is still very manual job. And if IT can come into it, the way supercomputing can make it possible, and if in India we can have commercial solutions available for the in companies, then probably this will be something very good as far as I think, and to progress into the research and into the chemistry.
Thank you, sir. Most of the questions are being answered, and I see Manish and Patrick taking pains to answer majority of them. They have all answered almost all of them, and 2 are pending. So the ones which are answered, I'm just reading it for others. One was with respect to ELN linked with SkyFinder or Reaccess for route optimization, and or is it only limited to the data ELN users have entered? So the answer is this example shows how you capture experiment data in a structured manner using ELN, and then use it analytics tool to get better insights. You can have Reaccess or other system integrated at data capture usage. Vishal Davle talks about how can the data and charts be obtained in ELN. Patrick says that in the ELN charts and visualization can be added to view the results of that experiment when performing meta-analysis. Compared results of multiple experiment analytics can be shown by. Then there is an anonymous question. Can extract data only from Empower and other CDS application as well as Chromeleon and Lab Solutions etc. So the answer is yes. Those data can be extracted. Then another from Manali. How compatible is the ELN system with analytical instruments so as to have easy compiling of data from the raw data files? Typically, primary data analysis is done in the ELN, while secondary data analysis is done in the ELN for comparison reason. Prajwal Mishra talks about eliminating the process of research information by scientists, citing the time consumption can lead to missing out on non-related important data. So if you can give more information, Manish and Patrick can answer your, so a little bit of more elaboration is required. Manali talks about how useful would be ELN in transforming lab experiments to pilot scale, and can it be used as predictable tool to transfer the technology? In the ELN, you can capture the process. So, another one question that is not being answered is, let me take that one and do the final part. So the question is, one last question. Is can extract data only? Just a minute. How? I think how safe is the cloud-based ELN system and export compliant? So I think all of them have been answered. I have also got the winner's name. Let me thank all our speakers who are present and who gave time for this e-conference. Sanjay Nandavadikar, Director IT, Cipla. We have Ankit Agarwal from and we have Kapil Kumar, Chief Scientific Officer, SRF Limited. Vinod Sivanand Onmute, Head Knowledge Management, RP Industries. And Ankit from Pi Industries. So let me thank all our speakers for taking time out from their busy schedule to be present in this e-conference. I request all delegates to rank this e-conference on the chat window, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I am just asking you if you can rank us so that we can get a good feedback on where we do stand and how we can improve upon it as we move forward. And that's the beauty of Zoom, that we can get your feedback instantaneously. And it's visible to all our speakers also, and also to the organizer. Let me announce the winners of the ICN Play and Win contest. I will just take a minute or so. Mr. Kotni Santosh, Senior Officer R&D at Hindustan Petroleum Corporation, is the winner for the first set of questions, which is what is PerkinElmer tagline? The tagline of the answer is for the better. The second question was 2019 revenue for PerkinElmer. The answer is US $2.9 billion. And the winner is Hardik Seth, Director Biz in Biz. And the third question was with respect to total customers of PerkinElmer. And the answer is 4,000 plus. And the winner is Grishma Shah, Data Scientist at Solvay. So let me thank all the speakers as well as delegates for attending this conference, and all the speakers for taking time out and also empowering us in terms of knowledge. I would request all delegates to register for the next set of events, which is on June 18th on Indian Specialty Chemicals Opportunities Galore, June 25, Green Chemistry, Sustainability Challenges. And so thanking you all once again, namaskar, and also to our partners, presenting partner Patrick Ensems and Manish Khandagle for making this interesting. I would now like to thank, this is Praveen Kishan signing off, to meet again on June 18 at 2:55 Indian Standard Time. Till then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.